In a quiet, unassuming town nestled in the heart of America, lived a woman named Clara. Clara was once a vibrant young woman, her eyes sparkling with dreams and her heart brimming with aspirations. She had married a man named Victor, a hard-working expatriate who had moved to Italy for a lucrative job opportunity. Victor's career kept him away from home for months at a time, leaving Clara to manage their household alone. Though she loved Victor deeply, his absence created a void in her life that she struggled to fill. Clara's days were monotonous, filled with the mundane tasks of cooking, cleaning, and maintaining their home. She often found herself staring out the window, lost in thought, wondering if this was all life had to offer. Victor sent money regularly, ensuring Clara had everything she needed materially, but emotionally she felt isolated and unfulfilled. The loneliness gnawed at her, and she yearned for something more, something that would make her feel alive again. One day, as Clara was finishing her chores, she realized how long it had been since she and Victor had shared a meaningful moment together. The emptiness inside her grew louder, and she began to crave companionship. It was during this vulnerable time that she crossed paths with a man named Daniel, an old friend of Victor's who lived nearby. Daniel was charming, ambitious, and carried an air of mystery that intrigued Clara. He had a way of looking at her that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. At first, Clara tried to dismiss her growing attraction to Daniel. She was, after all, a married woman, and her loyalty to Victor was unwavering. But as the days turned into weeks, Clara found herself drawn to Daniel's company. They began spending more time together, sharing conversations that ranged from lighthearted banter to deep, soul-searching discussions. Clara felt a spark she hadn't felt in years, and it both excited and terrified her. Daniel, too, seemed captivated by Clara. He often complimented her, calling her extraordinary and suggesting that she deserved more happiness than her current life offered. Clara tried to ignore his words, but they lingered in her mind, planting seeds of doubt about her marriage. She began to question whether she was truly happy with Victor or if she was merely going through the motions of life. As Clara's relationship with Daniel deepened, she found herself torn between her loyalty to Victor and her growing feelings for Daniel. She knew that what she was doing was wrong, but the thrill of the forbidden was intoxicating. She tried to convince herself that her feelings for Daniel were just a fleeting infatuation, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. One evening, as Clara sat alone in her garden, Daniel approached her. He looked into her eyes and said, "Clara, you deserve to be happy. If you let me, I can be the one to bring that happiness into your life." Clara's heart raced as she struggled to find the words to respond. She knew that if she gave in to her feelings, there would be no turning back. Yet the temptation was too strong to resist. Over time, Clara's relationship with Daniel became more intimate. She began to see him as more than just a friend, and the guilt she felt about betraying Victor weighed heavily on her conscience. She tried to push her feelings aside, but every time she saw Daniel, her resolve weakened. She knew that if Victor ever found out, their marriage would be destroyed, but she couldn't bring herself to end things with Daniel. Victor, oblivious to Clara's inner turmoil, continued to call her regularly, expressing his love and longing for her. Clara would listen to his voice on the phone, her heart aching with guilt. She wanted to tell him the truth, but she was too afraid of the consequences. Instead, she buried her feelings and tried to maintain the facade of a happy marriage. One day, Clara received devastating news: she was pregnant. At first, she was overjoyed, but her joy quickly turned to fear when she realized that the child might not be Victor's. The thought of carrying another man's child filled her with dread, and she knew that if Victor found out, their marriage would be over. She considered telling Daniel, but she was too ashamed to admit the truth. As Clara's pregnancy progressed, she became increasingly anxious. She tried to convince herself that the child was Victor's, but deep down, she knew there was a possibility it was Daniel's. She avoided Victor's calls, fearing that he would sense something was wrong. Meanwhile, Daniel continued to press her to leave Victor and start a new life with him. Clara felt trapped, torn between her loyalty to Victor and her growing attachment to Daniel. When Victor finally returned home, Clara's anxiety reached its peak. She tried to act normal, but Victor could sense that something was off. He noticed the distance between them and the sadness in Clara's eyes. One evening, as they sat together in silence, Victor turned to Clara and said, "Is there something you're not telling me? I can feel that something's changed between us." Clara's heart sank. She knew that the moment of truth had arrived. She took a deep breath and said, "Victor, I've made a terrible mistake. I've been seeing someone else." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, and Victor's face turned pale. He stared at Clara in disbelief, unable to comprehend what she had just said. "How could you do this to me?" Victor asked, his voice trembling with anger and pain. "I've given you everything, and this is how you repay me?" Clara burst into tears, her guilt and shame overwhelming her. "I'm so sorry, Victor. I never meant to hurt you. I was lonely and I made a terrible mistake. Please forgive me." Victor stood up and walked away, unable to look at Clara. He felt betrayed and heartbroken, unsure if he could ever trust her again. Clara sat alone, her heart heavy with regret. She knew that her actions had destroyed her marriage, and she feared that she would never be able to repair the damage. In the days that followed, Victor and Clara's relationship grew increasingly strained. Victor struggled to come to terms with Clara's betrayal, while Clara grappled with the consequences of her actions. She knew that she had to make a choice: stay with Victor and try to rebuild their marriage, or leave him and start a new life with Daniel. Clara's pregnancy added another layer of complexity to the situation. She knew that if the child was Daniel's, it would be a constant reminder of her infidelity. She considered ending the pregnancy, but the thought of losing the child filled her with sorrow. She felt trapped, unsure of what to do. One night, as Clara lay in bed, she had a vivid dream. In the dream, she saw herself standing at a crossroads, with Victor on one path and Daniel on the other. She knew that whichever path she chose, it would determine the course of her life. When she woke up, Clara realized that she had to make a decision. She couldn't continue living in limbo, torn between two men. Clara decided to confront Daniel. She met him at a quiet cafe and told him about her pregnancy. Daniel's face lit up with joy, but Clara quickly clarified that the child might not be his. Daniel's expression darkened and he said, "Clara, if the child is mine, I want to be a part of its life. But if it's Victor's, you need to decide what's best for you and the baby." Clara nodded, her heart heavy with uncertainty. She knew that she had to make a choice, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to face the consequences. She returned home and found Victor waiting for her. He looked at her with a mixture of anger and sadness and said, "Clara, I've been thinking. If you want to make this work, we need to start over. But if you're not willing to commit to our marriage, then maybe it's best if we go our separate ways." Clara's eyes filled with tears as she realized the gravity of her decision. She knew that she couldn't have both Victor and Daniel in her life. She had to choose one, and the choice she made would shape her future. After much soul-searching, Clara decided to stay with Victor. She knew that their relationship would never be the same, but she was willing to put in the effort to rebuild their marriage. She told Daniel that she couldn't continue their relationship and asked him to respect her decision. Daniel was heartbroken, but he understood that Clara had to do what was best for her and her child. As Clara and Victor worked on repairing their relationship, Clara gave birth to a baby girl. The child's paternity was never confirmed, but Clara chose to believe that she was Victor's. She poured all her love and energy into raising her daughter, determined to give her the best life possible. Over time, Clara and Victor's relationship began to heal. They learned to communicate openly and honestly, and they worked together to create a stable and loving environment for their daughter. Clara knew that she would always carry the guilt of her past mistakes, but she also knew that she had been given a second chance. The story of Clara's infidelity became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the consequences of making impulsive decisions. Clara learned that true happiness comes from within and that no amount of external validation can fill the void of loneliness. She vowed to never take her marriage for granted again and to always cherish the love she shared with Victor. In the end, Clara's journey was one of redemption and self-discovery. She learned that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope for a brighter future. And as she held her daughter in her arms, she knew that she had found the strength to overcome her past and build a new life filled with love, forgiveness, and second chances.